Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to the noon meeting. A few minutes late, apologies for that. We had a few technical problems. This noon meeting is hosted by the Transformation Committee and we are very excited to have with us today for the talk Mariam Karjiker. And Mariam is a clinical course convener for the students in the Department of Psychiatry at UCT. She has been involved in undergraduate education and curriculum planning since 2006. She has a deep interest in curriculum grounding the curriculum in relational frameworks, which grows understanding and knowledge of the impacts which the quality of human relationship has on our overall physical and mental well-being. She is also passionate about equipping young people with relational skills to grow sustainable human relationships. Professionally and a personal interest for Mariam is reflecting on clinical models which are currently being used for treating overweight patients. She herself has had a personal battle with weight and food and advocates for shifting these models. She has lost about 34 kilograms with no dieting, and she hopes to explore a model where nurturance of patients is our starting point, as opposed to counting calories, and where the relationship to self and food drives the process, where patients focus on their energy, on gaining health, as opposed to losing weight. We're very excited to have you here, Mariam. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So I think if there's a, yes, okay, thanks. Okay. Would just press here.
I'm not sure.
Yes,
Here we go.
That's okay. Okay.
Let me just check if everyone can see. Sorry, but go ahead. I'll just.
Okay.
Trying to see if it can. Sure that everyone can see.
Just ask them.
Just ask them.
I don't know how to ask them because it's running off.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. All right, so thank you for that introduction. So let me start. Okay, so firstly, I think I've got a personal investment, but the reason that I'm doing this is I'm trying to find spaces in the university to open up the conversational space about women, their bodies, their relationship to food. And because it has been such an intimate struggle for me, I've started speaking to the students, and all of that has meant that basically the beginning of the year I spoke to my department, and I went to Stellenbosch University and did the same thing, and now I'm speaking to you. So if you just think of it, a newborn baby, okay? We are all born innately with the inner wisdom to know how much to eat. Anybody who's had a baby will tell you when they're breastfeeding, the minute they fall, they just stop. You're feeding a baby and you want to give them 1 teaspoon of food extra once they're full. They will not open their mouth. That is like the biggest fight ever. So this shows that we are all born with inner wisdom to know how much to eat. But somewhere along the way, we lose this wisdom. And on a global level, it's happening, leading to huge implications for health. So when did we stop eating and knowing how much to eat and enjoying food and start eating in the way that we are now and obsessing about calories? So if you just think of women, okay, women have a unique relationships with food and with body. Women are the ones who are looked at, men do the looking. The transition from childhood to adolescence is very difficult for many women. There's a relentless sort of variety of ways of being seen now with social media and the technology, and that transition is now even worse, I think, when, for instance, I was a teenager. And the standards of beauty is, of course, when you're young, you don't understand where these standards and images are driven out of. Largely, it's about the women in society who can spend the most amount of money on clothes, on makeup, on shoes, etc., and is really driven by the commodity demands of capitalism. But a 14-year-old wouldn't see that. So we can go now to the scientific model. We now understand the human body, like there's a sort of mechanistic understanding. But we know that nutritional science is famously complex, okay? So calories are consumed and expended. If we consume more and expend less, we gain weight. And the sort of standard theory is that weight loss is achieved by reducing calories and increasing activity to burn calories. We know now that 90% of our body weight is maintained by our calorie intake, and you cannot out-train a bad diet. So 90% of the reason why anybody weighs what they weigh is because of their calorie intake. We know that. And we also now know about how sleep impacts weight and satiety, leptin and ghrelin, and hydration is also important. So remember that nutrition science started in the West, okay, and there wasn't much knowledge, or maybe even not necessarily curiosity about what people were eating in other places on earth. So I often use this analogy with students. If you start with at Pakistan and you go all the way through India, you know, Vietnam, Korea, Cambodia, China, and you end up in Japan, you're talking about most of the people on earth. They're eating carbohydrates 3 times a day, okay, traditionally. And traditionally, the people are slim. So sort of that kind of goes against the no-carb rule. And so one of the processes that people may need to do is from non-Western cultures, people may need to reflect and learn more deeply about their traditional diets. And of course, colonialism has affected, you know, the way people eat, and are they able to get hold of food, and all of that changed traditional diets. So where do we stand now? Overwhelming confusion about ways to eat. Every time, you know, every week a new fad comes. Recently I saw we must only eat raw food. So there's all these faddish trends, low carb, no carb, high protein, no fat, low fat, high fat. Okay, and people are cutting out entire food groups, so only consuming certain food groups. Then there's, of course, the constant negative messaging, especially to the young. And of course, people's self-esteem are tied into their body image and their appearance. And there's, of course, the disturbing growth of eating disorders globally. We must always remind ourselves, I always tell my colleagues, that the most lethal psychiatric illness is an eating disorder, anorexia. Even higher mortality rates than major depressive disorder. So we must reflect deeply on our relationships with food and the capacity of people to adequately nurture themselves. So what are the factors which drive dysfunctional patterns of eating? So then there are other medical and social problems. There's now the use of Ozempic, which people predict in 20 years, 50% of the US population will be on Ozempic. Then there's the use of surgery to manage weight. The body positivity movement encouraging and glorifying obesity. So I understand, having been overweight my whole life, why there might have been that overdrive. But I'll sit with groups of teenagers, and I think it's easier for me because I'm overweight myself, and I've explained to them that you cannot deny the medical knowledge that we have of what obesity does to the human body. So when I think of body positivity, I think that nobody is allowed to say cruel things about other people's bodies. That's just one short step from racism. But at the same time, we can't deny that there are things like being within a range of a healthy body weight. And then, of course, there are the internet sites training people to survive on severe restriction and calories, promoting anorexia. And then there are these mukbangs, you know, where a person who's clearly overweight will sit and consume on YouTube large quantities of food, and it's like a form of entertainment. So there's clearly problems around food. We could reflect further than that. Are we dealing here with addiction? So then can the recovery model work? So abstinence is not a possibility here, you know, obviously. So we would have to have a sort of a recovery model that teaches functional engagement with food. The group support aspect is valuable. The understanding of the escape into eating to cope with the stresses of life, I think, is valuable. I certainly think of myself as an addict in recovery. So I understand that there's a problem with food and that it's very easy for me to take, you know, the comfort of food to deal with the stresses. So for me, there is value in using the addiction model. So what is the medical model? Scales and tape measures in pursuit of recording BMI. If you cannot at a glance look at somebody and see they're overweight, I would say that's the height of incompetence medically. Do you need a scale and tape measure? And what does that really do for anybody, knowing their BMI? Why? This is not like we urgently need to know this. So part of my little NGO of one that I'm doing is, can we change this model from the shaming and humiliation, which is the first contact the patient has with us, to something far more compassionate? So then the next thing is, here's your diet sheet. What you must do is eat less and move more. Really, if that worked, we wouldn't have what we have now in the world around us. Clearly, this model doesn't work. So why is the contact with medicine so shaming and humiliating? What do we really learn? So I would say, patient walks in and they're clearly overweight. It's far more functional and connecting to recognize there's a problem here with the relationship with food. I don't really need to know your weight, the number, etc. I can see there's a problem. Let's talk about your relationship with food. I'm not sure if you know how much you weigh. If you're interested, there's a scale over there. You can go and check if you want to. I don't need to see it now, but you might be interested. Do you see what I'm saying? It's far more, I mean, having been in that position myself, of being put on scales and disciplines from doctors, etc., it's really painful. So people are born into systems of nurturance. So we must reflect on that system, the family system that they're born into socially, on every level, you know, geopolitically. Was there trauma that affected the ability of others to nurture us and for us to nurture ourselves? And be curious about cross-generational traditions around food and their relationship with food. What was the history of eating and when did the shifts happen? What were the models around food and nurturance? So I'm in the very sort of fortunate position to have had grandparents until I was a qualified doctor and lived, you know, in an extended family system and saw the way they lived. And I can now see the shift from my grandparents' generation to my parents' generation. So a simple thing, my grandparents, for them salad was sliced tomato, cucumber, carrot. That was it. At a minimum, maybe if there was a guest, they would put some lemon juice and some salt, but even most of the times they didn't. So if you think of our food, sort of, you know, from the Indian subcontinent, it's spicy, and it doesn't need more flavor on that vegetables, actually. It's a palate cleanser, like those vegetables. My parents' generation, they discover feta cheese and salad dressing, and you can see how just that one shift will change the caloric value of that meal. My grandparents were also born at home. They didn't need doctors. They weren't actually very impressed with them either. And they weren't going to follow. They produced their own food with their parents. They were not going to have a doctor tell them in the 1970s you must eat margarine. They knew butter was good. You see what I'm trying to say? They were not impressed by professionalism in that way. My parents' work generation were the ones who were listening to the doctors, which was the beginning of sort of taking people, if you think of it, people who had produced their own food, who had deep knowledge about food, about what was good. And you see what I'm trying to say? Breaking the transmission of that knowledge. And so we kind of need to look at that. And people need to look into their families and look at the shifts. So my grandparents, when my parents in the 1970s were starting to use margarine, they wouldn't go near it. And I remember a joke my grandfather made, and he said, if you could produce butter from plants, we would have done it. But not personally, what he meant, farmers would have done it. If you could have done it, you could have, why wouldn't they have? There was something deeply artificial about the process. And therefore they could see there was a trick in it, which my parents' generation couldn't see. So I say to people, forget about losing weight. I certainly don't think about losing weight. Think about gaining health. So stop obsessing about the scale and linking self-esteem to the number of this on the scale. I, for instance, weigh myself only once a month. Develop curiosity and reflection on what you eat, the ways in which you eat, and the triggers for eating. So initially, one often has to keep a food diary. So if you ask somebody who's overweight, like, how much do you think you eat? They will say, I don't know what's wrong because I don't eat a lot. I totally empathize with that because I could come home, like stressed from work, make a peanut butter sandwich, check an email, whatever, eat a biscuit, cook supper. By the time I sat down to eat, I would have forgotten that food completely. It was consumed unconsciously, and sadly, even without enjoying it. So simple rules like you don't consume food unless you are sitting down. You see, so those kinds of things. So often initially people can, if they keep a food diary, so initially what you can say to a patient, it's fine, there's clearly a problem here with the relationship with food. Just record what you eat for a month. So when I started doing that, I could see, okay, there's a pattern here. Somehow when I watch TV, I have to eat chips. Like I've paid an activity with eating. Not necessarily even maybe feeling like chips. It just now become, so then I could start seeing, like there's clearly a problem here with pairing eating with certain activities. I personally like organic measures. Like, what does it feel like to walk up the stairs? What does it feel like to bend down? What does it feel like to cut your toenails? Your watch strapping. So, in other words, those organic things says more about the quality of your life. Recently, I went somewhere and somebody was selling second-hand books outside a shop. And I always am lucky to find treasures in those kinds of situations. I got down and bent down and went through the boxes. It was only when I got to my car and I was driving home did I reflect how I did it effortlessly and how I wouldn't have done it effortlessly 30 kilos ago. So those kinds of feelings. So when I first went, so I do walking. I enjoy that exercise. When I went to Rose Memorial, that wooden gate at the bottom. That first hill up, when I went up the first time, wow, I don't know how many stops I made. And I thought to myself, how wonderful. Well, if I can just walk from here to the memorial without stopping, now I can walk to the second level below the blockhouse without stopping. To me, that's a far better measure of mile than the scale, you see. So look for those measures. And then once, so of course you have people weighing 350 kilos, 400 kilos. And for them, it's just, I'm not even going to try. This is impossible. No. It's to grow the understanding amongst ourselves firstly, and then educate others, that once you are overweight, just to lose 10% of your body weight has health benefits. So you weigh 120 kilos, get to 115. Stop dreaming about when I weigh 60 kilos and etc. You see, get to 115 when you get there, get to 110. So those which we are not doing for patients, because we're giving them their BMI and then we're saying you're totally unhealthy. This is what your BMI should be. You see, we're not actually seeing that it's a process. It's not about the food, but it's not about the food. Okay. So somebody once said it in the sentence that I always remember. I read it somewhere in a book. So it is important to understand calories, but then paradoxically, one has to get to the place where you eat and you're not obsessing about it, because that is what people with healthy weights are able to do. The ones who keep onto their inner wisdom. So you have to grow your knowledge about food and calories, but grow the skill to eat food and not calories. So I always say to people, I eat food, I don't eat calories. Okay. Think more about the nutritional value of the food and how it's nurturing our bodies instead of obsessing about calories. So if I have a food rule, it's like I have a principle about food. I want to eat close to the earth. There must have been raw ingredients that I turned into food. So that would even go, I baked biscuits for, a meeting I had to go to. I saw sugar, butter, flour. That's good. You see what I'm saying? I know exactly what went in. So the body needs all the food groups, from fat to protein, to function optimally. So try to consume close to the earth, cook and bake at home. So I discovered something called intuitive eating. You can download the book. It was written in the 1990s by these two psychologists. And I've just put down the chapter really, the heading. But this is, so go and look for, on YouTube for people explaining intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is not to lose weight. It's to rectify the relationship with food. And then, of course, once that is rectified, people do lose weight. So reject the diet mentality, honor your hunger, make peace with food, challenge the food police, discover the satisfaction factor. So listen to your body, feel your fullness, cope with your emotions with kindness, respect your body, move, whatever you want to do. Find the joyful thing that you want to do. Honor your health with gentle nutrition. So it can sometimes shock me how little I eat. So in the past, if I felt like a piece of chocolate cake, I would get the chocolate cake and I would just consume it. Now, chocolate cake is wonderful and it's an occasion. So I'll make me a nice cup of coffee in a beautiful mug and I will have this beautiful slice of chocolate cake. It can shock me that I'll have 3 mouthfuls and I'm completely full. And it can take me more than a week to finish the slice. I can put it in a Tupperware in the fridge and eat 3 mouthfuls every day with coffee. It's almost miraculous, but it isn't really. It's the inner wisdom that's there that I'm obviously connecting to. And not feel deprived. So for instance, I have everything in my house. I have chips in my house. I have chocolate in my house. Nothing is forbidden. So it can shock me that I can maybe, and then the interesting thing about the chocolate cake, I may only want to eat I won't feel like eating it for 2-3 months because I've given myself permission. It's okay, you can eat it when you want to. So then once in 2 months, I will feel like eating chips and it can shock me that I can put a little in a bowl and by the time I get to the 5th chip, it just tastes like chips. And then I'm sort of, nah, I'm now tired. Now I've tasted the chips. I know what chips taste like. Now I don't want more chips, you see. But it was a process that led there. Okay. I like to go to second-hand bookshops and look up, what did people find old books from the 1980s and 90s? What did people think then? And I found this little program, they called it Hugs. So the title of the book was You Matter, Calories Don't. And it drew me in, and it was something in the 1990s. So Hugs was an acronym for health investment, understanding lifestyle, group support, and self-esteem enhancement, which was quite interesting. And then there's an author in India, Rujuta Diwika, who specifically deals with the food that Indian people eat. And I like the way she looks at food, cutting out nothing, saying to people, ghee has been used for 5,000 years. I mean, it's mentioned in the Upanishads and the Vedas. How can this be bad? And she says people need several strategies. They need a nutritional strategy, an exercise strategy, a sleep strategy, and a relationship strategy. And you can see how this differs completely from the medical model of here's your diet sheet and why don't you move more? And you see, it's seeing the person in a bigger context and seeing what is feeding into the way they eat in a much bigger way. So then why should we lose weight if we are overweight? There's actually only one truth, and that is that we can actually prove to you that you will be physically healthier. We can show you the blood pressure, the glucose profile. That is the only reason why people should lose weight. In other words, what people find beautiful is diverse. So I will often say to young women, I can take a random group of 10 young men on the street and line them up and ask you, do you doubt that there will be a woman that will find each one of these men attractive? And women agree, yes. But they don't give men that benefit of the doubt. You see, the same applies to men. And then they'll say, but men have a type, but we also have a type. We're also attracted to certain. You see, and these things are complex, comes in from our parents and all of that. So there's no one thing that makes anyone attractive. Beauty is diverse, and what people find beautiful is diverse. And the more we can get that into the minds of young people, the better it will be for their self-esteem. But there is a thing like healthy parameters for weight. And if you lose weight, you'll be healthier. People won't love you more, necessarily find you more attractive, but you will be healthier. So stop linking body weight to sexual attractiveness, to being acceptable to society, to meeting the needs of others to ensure love and connection, or ensuring your own needs for love and connection via ideal body weight. So I sometimes have to pull a patient up and or somebody socially, or do people, I'm a psychiatrist, and do people really believe that there is an ideal body weight at which life has no problems? On some deep level, they must be believing that. They must be. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So many people who are overweight, they have this fantasy, if I lose my weight, I'll have no more problems. Now you actually may have new problems, okay? Many that you can't actually deal with, and your sister who's nasty to you is still going to be nasty to you. You see what I'm trying to say? They're trying to lose weight to solve other things, which of course, that's not what the body is about. And so that kind of thing, getting people to understand that the way we look, is not, if we're going to get it to look, a certain way, and of course feeds into the materialism of, if I drove a certain kind of car, or I lived in a certain kind of house, or I had certain clothes, people would be nicer to me and life would be better. But life is always hard, you know, no matter how people look or what their weight is. So sort of equating weight loss with solving emotional and psychological problems, we need to divorce that. Okay, but then paradoxically, we need to look into the emotions and the psychology that lead to the reasons why people may be overweight. I think things are stuck here. Yeah, it's not moving forward. So this is sort of coming towards the end. So then I think the next slide would have been, I've got actually a picture of myself that I wanted to show you on here, but it's fine. Carmen's got the slides. Huh?
The mouse.
Oh, must I use the mouse?
Just try that. There you go. You can maybe just see it from there.
Yeah.
Carmen is busy.
Oh, okay. Okay, so okay. So how would I go?
No, she's just showing the picture, which is on the screen for everybody to see.
Oh, okay. Well,
Right, let me just maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe just the slide before this one. This one.
Carmen.
Yeah. Oh, is it working fine now? Okay, yeah. The more we are able to reflect on our own narratives of nurturance, the more we will be able to connect to the nurturance narratives of patients and all grow more functional relationships with food and eating. We can only truly connect to others in the places we have connected within ourselves. And so this is like a picture of myself. I also thought now Apricots is passed on like a little memorial talk for him. He's gone on to Stellenbosch University also. But sort of to just give, people who don't know me, obviously from that picture you can see that I was bigger. But when I look at that picture now and I remember my life then, how do I feel inside? I feel the same. The same struggles, the same. I'm trying to say, I didn't magically become somebody else. I'm that same person, but I am physically healthier. And that does feel really good to me, So yeah. So I wanted to open up the space. So thank you. Yeah, so these questions or So it's interesting that students sometimes feel, because if you think of the power structure of medicine, they're right at the bottom. They can feel very uncomfortable about the way sometimes clinicians speak about patients' bodies. I always say to people, I do think there's a truism to this, that weight is for women probably what height is for men, in terms of bullying and, especially when people are teenagers, which is, of course, where a lot of the self-esteem is set up around appearance. So I think we must be deeply reflective. So, for instance, people have maybe now a teenager or their own child comes home from school and they've got beef with somebody. Now they're talking about their anger, about, with another girl, and they'll say something unkind about the person's appearance. We need to step into those conversations. How, what would you feel if somebody said that about you? So we need to step into the conversations where people are sort of saying these cruel things so that we can open the space. See what I'm saying? So just explain to me, how is her hair or her height or whatever, how is that affecting actually emotionally what's going on between you? But it's an easy target for you to use. Do you see what I'm saying? It's an easy way to be cruel. So to open up that kind of space, I think, is very important. And then when we are on ward rounds and that, and we speak about patients, like, what do they feel about the tone in our voice and the way we're speaking? And you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for.
Yes, yes, yes.
So thank you for this very helpful. Yeah, I mean, I'm someone who until about 6 months ago struggled with shortness, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm the shortest amongst all of my siblings. But I'm wondering, like, I'm thinking about the way that we language, the way we use language, right?
Yes.
Because pathology is still there,
Yes.
and how we almost force people to assimilate to hegemonic
Yes.
ways of doing it.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that is rooted in that, in terms of way esteem issues permeate from there. It's how people enter into the social contract.
Yes.
In any environment, in any community, in any space. There's this predetermined ideal that everyone must aspire to, and everything else is subject to the pursuit of that. And so it takes a lot of negotiation with the self first to actually reclaim the autonomy and agency to say, this is who I am. I'm actually quite short, and you know what, I'm fine with that. But I think also from a weight perspective, there's always the flirting with food, for an example, because you're trying to find a sense of comfort in yourself first. So yeah, I think the way that we name things, like I remember growing up with grandparents as well, we used to refer to food as isikaso. Now that's closer for, and literal translation is something that ties you over. You know, so there was the understanding that when it comes to meal time, we need to tie over, not necessarily immersing ourselves in the food. So
when we come to the table, food is part of why we are there.
yeah.
We come together to connect for love, for nurturance, and the more we creating warmth and connection, the more we do that, the more food finds its proper place. You know what I mean? It's to allow the food to find its proper place. I think it's very, very important. And I think like, so it's amazed me since I've started on this journey, like, you know, going around giving this talk, like women, you know, speak easier about these things. So thank you for sharing that, you know, for being so brave sharing that. People seemingly of normal body weight will share. I met a woman recently who said she cannot remember, she's 50 now. As far back, certainly from her teenage years, she had this thing in her head that she should not exceed 50 kilos. And I realize now that her whole life is around maintaining that 50 kilos. You see, a huge emotional cost. You know.
Questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mariam, there's a couple of questions. I think if people want to, Feroza, I'm not sure in terms of order. Maybe Feroza, you want to go first?
Okay, thank you so much. Firstly, Mariam, thank you so much for this talk. I completely understand how brave you must be to have embarked on this journey and to share this journey with us. So, and by the way, you look amazing. Even though this is not about looks, you look amazing. And I think that your story is really inspiring. And it resonates a lot with me because I have struggled with my weight all of my life. I've had times when I was thin, then times when I pick up weight, and it's just been fluctuating all of my life. And also for a very long time, also tied to my self-esteem. And bringing it back to the medical issues, right? I would, in fact, to this day, dread going to my doctor for a checkup because he's probably going to check my BMI. And that is the one part of a medical consultation that I absolutely hate. So your nurturing model, where you actually just look at a patient and go, okay, we need to work on your health, and this is how we work on your health, and look at the various aspects, including obesity, is a much kinder model to the patient. Because, you know, if you and I have felt this, and there are probably patients who don't even want to go to the doctor because of this, which means missed opportunities, hey, and a more detrimental impact to their health because of the missed opportunities. So I just wanted to make that comment, bring it back to how we take this, how we move this forward in terms of our patients and managing our patients. And I really like your message about it's not about losing weight, it's about gaining health, because that needs to be the focus. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. If I speak like this, can they hear me?
Yes, but maybe turn around.
Yeah. So, yeah, totally agree with that. We need to change that model, you know, to stop the shaming, stop the humiliation. And it's a problem, it's a problem with the relationship with food. And how can we heal that? How can the patient heal that? So, yeah, definitely.
Anna.
Yeah, Anna?
Hi there. Thanks for your presentation. It's nice to have some recognition within our department. The BMI isn't a wonderful thing. Obviously, what you've spoken about is these interactions at a sort of doctor-patient level, but obviously in the public health department, we're looking at things from a slightly more systematic perspective. And from that view, there's three things I'd like to raise, which I think are very important when we think about these. Oh, sorry. And I come to this as someone who's been fat most of my life, and at this point have no intention of trying to lose weight, because we know that intentional weight loss is one of the biggest predictors of weight gain, unfortunately. And so that's just some background on me. But from a systemic perspective, the first is that in this country, if you're using the public system for contraception, pretty much the only contraceptive you can get is depot. It's becoming slightly more possible now to get a coil, but not that easy. And we know that depot has one of the biggest weight gain profiles of all contraceptives. So I really feel that if we as a public health department really mean what we say when we think that obesity is a health crisis, then we need to put our money where our mouth is and really start pushing for greater availability of contraceptives, of different kinds of contraceptives, so that people aren't lumped onto something which is going to make them overweight and then make them subject to the kind of medical discrimination that you've spoken about. It's a really unfair cycle. The second, we as public health professionals, I do feel like we need to take responsibility for our actions a little bit. You know, getting people to stop smoking was obviously a fantastic victory. We've not stopped people altogether from smoking, but we've decreased it. It was a fantastic appetite suppressant, nicotine. And so I do think we need to take some responsibility for the fact that we have encouraged the population to stop using an appetite suppressant. And the third thing, I really appreciate what you said about stopping linking weight to things like attractiveness or social acceptability. But I do think we need to recognize the systemic discrimination that fat people face. It's not just about our own perceptions of how society sees us. It's also about the fact that if I go for a job interview, I'm going to be taken less seriously because I'm fat, and particularly because I'm a fat woman. There's an intersection there too. And so, yeah, that's what I wanted to share, really. It's really important that we look at this on the systemic level and not just from the individual level of individual behavior change.
Thanks, Anna. I think we just in the chat recognizing for us as obesity prevention must be part of smoking counseling and prevention programs, correct?
Yeah.
Is there any other questions and any other comments? I know it's like 2 minutes before 1 o'clock.
Yeah, so it's about, I mean, I'm doing this, I was at Stellenbosch University, I was with my department I would want to also approach Department of Medicine, just hoping to open the space to talk about women, their bodies and weight. And I think a clinician, sharing their journey, will be a valuable thing. So that's why I'm doing this and to generate, conversation around it. Okay.
Strictly around smoking prevention, yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes. I don't want to keep everybody too long, but I want to thank Mariam so much. I mean, I think for me personally as well, it touched me and sparked a lot of ideas about our weight management. I won't call it being overweight. I call it how we have relationships, not just with food, but with our weight. Because that's also, it's quite a big thing. Because no matter if you're thin, you still have a relationship with your weight.
Yes.
So it's not a question around how much obesity,
yes,
but it's also around the question of your relationship with yourself and how you perceive yourself.
Yes.
And I think today's talk was just great in terms of how you need to look at yourself and appreciate yourself in different lights. Yes. And again, Mariam, thank you so much for the journey that you've just described for us. Appreciate sharing that with us, and also just thanks for coming out.
Pleasure. And thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Lots of applause.
There you go. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you at the next noon meeting. Thanks again.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, guys.